going on, Mayor? What is going on that we have put criminals and criminal behavior and ahead of victims and ahead of our families and our communities?
Yeah, I have no idea what's going on. 18 months ago, this was passed. Or actually more than that, January of 2021, this was passed. The reason it didn't go into effect until January of 2023 is because there's an election this year, and they knew that. So they didn't want to see it. And we've been living it here in Cook County in the Chicago area. These are Kim Foxx's policies on steroids. And we've been living with it here and dealing with the criminals here. And her policies, which are like the other weak DAs throughout the entire country, this is worse. And then when you fold in all of the trespassing related issues as well, people are going to be forced to take the law into their own hands at some point.
Well, I absolutely. And I absolutely would take the law into my own hands if my family was being threatened. We see what happens when you just release prisoners out on the streets, when you don't have any system of law, when you defund the police, when you take away the power. And I'm not even talking about defunding them like financially either. You can defund them by just limiting their ability to even work on the job. I mean, their hands are tied behind their backs. They feel like they can't do their job. Look at what's happened in Chicago with the crime. Talk a little bit about Kim Foxx. She's not the only one. We have DAs across this country. We've seen it from LA. We've seen it all the way to Pennsylvania. We've seen it across the country. These radical DAs, that are coming in and then they're just kind of dismantling any semblance of civility and normalcy in our communities. Talk a little bit about what's happening there, because I know it's been tough for the people of Illinois.
She's been in office slightly longer than I have, and we saw crime starting to spike when I got in office 5 months after her. And her policies she runs a catch and release program is what she runs. And she runs the DA's office like she's the public defender. And we need public defenders, but we need DAs. And if you want to be the public defender, then be the public defender. But that's how she runs her office. And she has people retiring. She has people leaving because they don't like working underneath her. And the bails that we get from the court system are incredibly low. And now they're not even going to have bail. And we know that she's a weak DA, so she won't take any extra steps. There are some extra steps that can be taken in this bill to try to get bail. I guarantee you she will not do that. And it really still makes it very, very difficult, very time-consuming, very expensive. And some of the neighboring DAs will try to get some better bails, but it's very unlikely that they're going to be able to get it. And what's even worse is anyone being held on bail on January 1st, they're going to be let out the door. Now think about that. They're not going to be bused to where they were arrested. They're going to be let out the door at 26 in California and Chicago, or in Wheaton and DuPage County, or in Bridgeview. That's where they're going to be let out. And when that happens, it's January 1st in Chicago with people who don't have a job, are already in jail for some kind of crime. What do you think they're going to do? And you can't remove them from your garage for trespassing or your shed. What could possibly go wrong?
See, this is what I don't understand. How is it even possible? And I think this is where a lot of Americans are just blown away. I remember bringing stories even to Fox sometimes about things like this, and they would be like, that can't be true. That can't be true. Like, you have to show me proof that this is a real story before I put it on the air. But we really can't throw people out of our garages. This is the kind of law that they passed. What is it going to take?
They can write them a ticket, but it'll be lowered to a class B and C misdemeanor, which shall issue a ticket, which means the police can't even put their hands on them. If they put their hands on them, it's a Fourth Amendment violation, and they're going to get sued civilly. So they can't touch them. They can take residence in your shed. They can hang out by your pool. And I'm a dad. Right? My kids are grown now, but I can't even imagine fathers with someone pitching a tent in their backyard, how they're going to react to that.
Well, let me tell you, if it's you,
their family, or the moms, everyone, we're going to defend our kids.
Well, you're right about saying that about moms. I'm a mom. and some man tries to pitch a tent in my yard. Well, I live in Texas, so there's a little different story here.
Yeah.
Some man tries to pitch, and that's why I moved to Texas. Some man tries to pitch a tent here in Texas, and if they don't get that tent off my yard and they don't get out of my property, I mean, I can take drastic measures, and I would, to protect my family. And that's the issue. Why are they trying to put residents into these kind of dangerous and precarious situations? I was talking about this on my most recent podcast where I talked about driving through Georgetown, and there was a man my daughter actually pointed it out to me, and she was 7 years old at the time, and he was naked in front of a brownstone mansion. You know, these are $1 million homes in Georgetown, washing himself with a hose in a yard of a family. You could see a little kid's bike in the yard. And, you know, how is this okay? How are we supposed to deal with that? And as mayor, what is what are you hearing from your constituents? What are you hearing from people about this? Did they even know this was happening?
So we've been talking about it for a long time. When this was first up for a vote, we passed resolutions to vote against it. We passed a resolution asking for the governor to veto it. So we were public with it, but people don't necessarily pay attention to their local board meetings, even though we've been public. And I've written articles. I've written articles about it. I've reached out to constituents about it, said it over and over again. But now it's getting close. And now the bells are really being rung, and they're being rung nationally, and people are starting to pay more attention because it is around the corner. And frankly, most of the people I talk to, they're like, your first reaction, is this real? Is this true? Yes, it's true. Yes, it's real. And yes, this is going to happen. And they're like, who possibly thinks this is a good idea? Same question you asked. Well, apparently enough people to pass by one vote. And oh, by the way, you think about it, we have a supermajority here for the Democratic Party, and they passed by one vote. So it's not all the Democrats. A lot of them realized what a bad vote this was. And my understanding was when it went up for a vote, aside from they changed the number of the bill, introduced the new bill so there weren't the 40,000 witness slips against it. And then they put it in front of everyone, and in 40 minutes they passed it. Well, also, normally when they do a vote, it's kind of a 3, 2, 1 kind of thing. Okay, all the votes are in. Well, they didn't have all the votes. Right. So then they sent groups of people, apparently, like mobs of other state reps and to go and push this vote through to get people to change their votes. And who knows what they promised them or threatened them with or what have you, but got enough of them to get over the line and pass this just abomination of a bill.
This is what's so interesting to me. This is what I think it fascinates me, kind of blows my mind. It's these dirty political tricksters, right? They come in, they don't give you enough time to read the bill. They change the name of the bill. They slip it into a different bill. They hide it from the public. But then it goes down to the real question, where you brought it up very succinctly. What did they say to the Dems that did vote for it? Well, did they threaten them? Did they promise them something? And then it comes down to this. Who benefits from a bill like this? Who in the end, because somebody has to benefit, right? There has to be something going on that we're not us decent human beings are not seeing the whole picture here. Because that would be like me saying, hey, I'm going to pass a bill to take the gates off of my, HOA and just let people run wild. And I'm not going to, it makes no sense. This bill at all. And so what do you think it is? What are they gaining from this bill? What are you hearing on the streets?
So what I heard, and I have not confirmed it, and I've been running for Congress. I don't have the time to confirm it, but I sure hope somebody goes out and does, is that so some of the stuff that was in this bill was also a lot of policing things, like it mandated body cams, which are very expensive. And what's more expensive than the body cams themselves is all of the back end stuff, all the data that has to be collected, the servers, the FOIAs that can be done. And so you need people to do those FOIAs. So there's people that need to be hired for those FOIAs. But my understanding is some of those state legislators have the companies that are the only ones that do the back end work for those body cams.
Oh,
so there's the body cams, there's the back end data, there's the servers, there's all of these things that are now going to be contracts. You think about that expense across 1,400 communities, And our community had already approved body cameras, but we refused to put our officers in them because this bill basically said that they can't access their body cameras for a report, but then they can use that against them in court. I'm like, wait a minute. So you're telling them that they're going to be accused of lying if they write the report and it's different than the body cam, but you're not going to let them access the video, which nobody's memory is perfect. So we said, until you fix this, we won't put our officers in body cams. Well, they did actually clean that part of the bill up, and so we put our officers in them. So we can afford it. We're a relatively affluent community. We place a big emphasis on our policing, and also making sure not only that we keep our community safe, but that we hire the best officers and we keep them well trained. So it was important for us. And 99% of any issue that comes up, 99% of the times, body cams clear an officer. So the officers wanted them to. But that's very expensive, and other towns can't afford that.
So do you think that they were thinking like but how does that reconcile with with not removing trespassers from like private property? How does that reconcile with this? I mean, what are they?
It doesn't. I think they're independent, other than the fact that they can now FOIA your body camera footage and say, "Oh, you put your hand on me, or you did this, or
exactly." So they're probably looking to, to make the police, once again, law enforcement, look bad, right? I mean, this is about putting our law enforcement officials on the spot as well.
Well, so that's the other thing. Statewide, people can anonymously complain about officers. So think about that. Someone gets arrested, and they go and have 6 of their friends go immediately file anonymous complaints against an officer to muddy up that officer's name for when they go to court to try and get a conviction. There's all kinds of things in this bill that are just bad. It just needs to be repealed. There are some good things that we do already in our police force, and most police forces, I think, follow a lot of these things already. But by and large, the criminal no cash bail portion of it, the trespassing portion, the weakening of so many laws and making them misdemeanors, or lowering, like trespassing, making it a weaker misdemeanor, it's atrocious.
Mayor Peacock, you are going to be running for Congress. You are running for Congress. I mean, I think this issue is just setting you apart from the rest. Tell me a little bit about that and why you chose to run.
Well, I chose to run because in Washington, D.C., we see nothing getting done at all. And it's just gridlock, and the policies are horrible, and it's basically completely one-sided. We needed to flip the House. I thought I was the right person to do it, given that this is the biggest voting block in the district, is in my town. And not a lifelong goal of mine to be a congressman. I've only been a mayor for 5 years, so I haven't been in politics that long. But I just think we need good people there with a broad base of experience. And I think between my time in the Air Force as a business owner and then as a mayor, I think I have those skills needed. And frankly, my opponent, Sean Casten, is so far to the left. I mean, he not only the Safety Act here, not only does he support all of those policies, in D.C., he actually voted for the Justice Act, which not only does all of this, but also gets rid of qualified immunity for police officers, which no police officer would ever want to apply for a job.
Absolutely. I mean, we've talked to police officers before. I've talked to police officers even when I've gone up to New York City about this. This is absolutely ridiculous. This idea that no cash immunity, that they won't have any immunity against like an action that has taken place, to protect themselves and people within their department is absolutely ludicrous. And they've said that I've talked to folks that said they would just walk away from the job. They would just quit and completely walk away from the job if that ever goes through.
They would be ruined financially from lawsuits and everything else.
Right.
You would essentially, you can be, so what it means, and I don't know that everyone understands it, it means that you can be sued for a traffic ticket. You can be sued for anything. So just like in any job that you have, they could sue them individually, and they could go after their house, their car, and everything else. For following procedures and following the law, they can be sued civilly. Now, even now, they can still be sued civilly if they violate procedures or violate the law. So that still exists. They could be sued if they actually follow the law or follow procedures. And imagine that, a jury of your peers, what could happen in that case, especially, in the city of Chicago. So officers would not want to, I can't imagine we'd be able to hire one that was of any quality.
Oh, no. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It just exposes them to everything that's wrong and everything that can go wrong. And it does no good for the citizens either. When you don't have the highest quality officers, you know what I mean, working in your communities. And I think that would immediately eliminate that. Let's talk about that a little bit, though, because this has been, I think, the first time I would say in the history of the United States where we've actually seen lawmakers so far to the left. This isn't like our old Democratic Party, you know, where people would debate issues or policy and then find a happy medium and come to some resolution, which wouldn't happen all the time, but it would happen more often than not. We're talking about ideas like defund the police, defund ICE, you know, eliminate immigration and customs enforcement, break down police departments. Have you ever in your wildest imagination imagined that this would be a debate that we would be having?
The whole world is upside down. And the other big issue right now, you may have seen it on Fox and even today, and I think some other places have picked it up as well, is that obviously Governor Abbott sent migrants to the city of Chicago.
I was going to ask you about that.
To Lori Lightfoot. And she turned around and shipped them right back to the suburbs. So wait a minute. The city of Chicago has said they're a sanctuary city. So migrants came in and you sent them to a non-sanctuary city. You just complained about that happening, and now you sent them to the suburbs right away. And to me, that there's a couple of problems here. One, you're treating these innocent, many cases, innocent people who are invited here by the president wrongly, in probably all of our opinions that are on this, watching this show, but invited these people to the country to come across the border. And they're poor, and the United States is the best country in the world. So you can't blame them for making that trek. Now you've shipped them up to Chicago. Now you've shipped them to Burridge. You're treating them like cattle. I mean,
that's absolutely
it's inhumane. Then on top of that, we have the problems of the border, and we have the problems of how they're vetted. So we know that we have criminals. We don't know if they're in this bunch. We know we have criminals. We know we have terrorists getting across. That just came out in the Inspector General report. Well, those policies are driven by my opponent. He fully supports them, and by Joe Biden and the rest of the Democratic Party. They own those policies. So they're potentially putting criminals in our streets into Chicago. Then Chicago goes, well, we don't want. We're going to shove them off into the suburbs. So you deal with them, and we're going to now let them all. If they do get caught with something, we're going to let them all walk free because we have the Safety Act.
Well,
what could go wrong?
Well, a lot can go wrong. I spend a large majority of my time on the U.S.-Mexico border. I travel frequently to Central America. I broke a story the other night on Fox News, a documentation showing how many in just one area of this border along the Rio Grande Valley sector, thousands in the last month of people with criminal backgrounds, past criminal backgrounds, or, crossing back and forth into the United States, having been sent back, having come back in. But a lot of the people that I had on the documentation had criminal records. Pedophilia, child endangerment. I could talk about MS-13, long rap sheets, gangs, gang members, and on and on and on. And this is something that I think the Democrats own wholeheartedly now. And it's also the UN says this past year, which a lot of people don't remember or don't realize, they pointed to the U.S.-Mexico border as being the most dangerous land crossing in the world because of the escalation in deaths and violence in coming here. But this is something that you rightly stated. Your opponent, as well as Biden, President Biden, have open arms for. Lori Lightfoot backs his policies on the border and elsewhere. So I don't know why they're angry at Governor Abbott. I mean, these people are going where they want to go. They're going to sanctuary cities that they have been told will welcome them with open arms. So if they want to put them on a bus and get them there, that's fine. We're going to send them there anyways. I go on planes all the time that are filled with illegal migrants flying without even having IDs. And that's based on Biden's policy.
Well, not only that, the southern border is the crossing for fentanyl in the opioid crisis.
Correct.
And so Sean Casten, my opponent, voted against the federal ban on fentanyl. Okay, that passed even with because even most Democrats know that's a bad idea. My opponent voted against extending that ban. Okay, then you think about that in Illinois. There are people trying to push and make fentanyl a misdemeanor in Illinois. And
It's
then
incredible.
they complain about the opioid crisis. I'm like, are you out of your minds? And I honestly can't fathom how individuals can even think this way. That something with 3 grams that could kill 1,000 people, that we would want that on our streets.
That is probably
what we put in place.
Yeah, is that one of the issues that you're really going to be fighting against? Because I know it's affected Illinois. I see what it's done to Ohio. I see what's happening across the United States when it comes to fentanyl. And by the way, a lot of the pills that are on our streets are counterfeit pills. So Casten should know better than to vote against something like that, because we have to fight this every which way we can. These counterfeit pills, I consider them absolute poison. They're poisoning our children, poisoning our communities. And some of these precursor chemicals are coming from adversaries like China, who are allowing these cartels to manufacture these tablets, bring them into the United States to be sold for really, incredible prices once you look at how much they can bring across. And you're right. Sometimes it's enough to kill entire states over and over again. At least they try to explain it that way. When they catch these large amounts of fentanyl coming across our border, and over 100,000 young people who've lost their lives. What will be your main platforms when I guess that would separate you from your opponent? What are you going to be fighting for most? Because I know whatever you're fighting for, it's got to be the same for a lot of Republicans in a lot of these areas that are overwhelmed by Democrats.
So, first and foremost, it's the crime issue that we've been talking about. I already talked about
Right.
my opponent's position on fentanyl. He also voted against the Violence Against Women Act. Well, we've taken a hard stance on crime, even in Cook County. And we're a town in Cook County, and crime is lowered every year since I've been mayor, and it's the lowest it's been in 27 years. Crimes against people and persons.
Right.
Because we're very, very proactive, and we have a great police department. How do we do that? We do that by collecting so much evidence that Kim Foxx has to charge. We do that by using private labs for evidence, so we get it in 24 hours, so people aren't released back out on the street. If we go to the state, it's 6 months to a year. Now you got to go find them again. Puts your officers at risk, right? So we do a lot of things to ensure that our people, that our community is safe, and I have a track record of that. Sean Casten has absolutely the opposite. And then it's inflation in the economy. Sean Casten has said that we had zero inflation. He agreed with Biden last month, and now we have it 8.3 again this month, right? And so he said that. He said that we're not in a recession. If you can't even acknowledge that a problem exists, how can you fix it? You can't. And as a mayor, we've lowered our debt $52 million. We've lowered our spending, our operations spending 14%. And that's without cutting any police dollars. So that's like 20% to the rest of our budget. Right? We've done good government things that have been fiscally responsible, which is what would help for inflation. Sean Casten wants to throw natural gas and gas out the window for renewables. Are we going to need more energy or less in 10 years? We're going to need more. So why are we taking anything off the plate? We should be adding everything. If some of that's renewables, that's great. We should be doing all of it. So there couldn't be two more different candidates than Sean Casten or myself on pretty much every issue. And it's really, but it boils down to crime, inflation, and the economy. That's what's, people don't like paying, over $4 a gallon for gas. They don't like milk that's, gone up 60%. Everything costs so much more. People are being severely impacted by that. And then here, the crime is just out of control, and it's going to get so much worse if they stay in power.
I got to tell you, those are the issues that when I talk to moms and when I talk to, regular families, and I consider myself to be one of them. I go to the grocery store. I see how much groceries have gone up. Crime is a huge issue for all of us, and education. I think every single candidate for Congress, especially Republican candidate for Congress right now, needs to be following in your footsteps, needs to be listening to you. Look how great, I always say Governor Youngkin did in Virginia. up against the Dems when he stood up for families, stood up for, our schools, and stood against crime. I think you're phenomenal. I hope you come back on the show. And where can our listeners go to support you? Where can they go? Because I really think we really need to do that. All of us need to be fighting together, even if we're not living in your community, even if we're not in Illinois. We need to be supporting the good people like you, Republicans, who are out there doing this good job and defending us. Where can they go?
Yeah, this is a very winnable seat. www.keithpecaw.com. And they can get all the information they need right there. So thank you very much, Sarah. I appreciate it.
I told you, we've got these great people running for office. Now we just need to wake up, America. We need to get to the polls. We need to get to the ballot boxes. We need to vote the right people into office.